I'm Lila, 28, and I can tell you the exact second my childhood ended. 6:42 p.m., a Thursday, with rain whispering on the porch roof and smoke curling from our living room fireplace in Maple Harbor. I walked in and saw my father and his new wife, Sheila, feeding orange mouths of flame with old paper. My grandmother's handwriting flared and vanished in a breath. The smell of it, hot ink and brittle, dusty paper, tasted like pennies on my tongue. "What are you doing?" I asked, and the question was so small, I barely recognized my voice. There were tear tracks drying on my cheeks that I hadn't noticed until there. Heat made them sting. Dad flinched. Sheila did not. Sheila lifted the fire poker, nudged ash over glowing signatures. "Tittying," she said. "Your grandmother collected too much clutter." It was 6 days after Nana Joy's funeral. The house still smelled like lilies and casserole. Family friends had drifted away. People returned to their routines. I remained in the place that held my last unbroken promise I'd carry forward. What Nana built, her little yellow house with the garden of lavender, the bakery below it called Joyful Crust, and the long table where our neighbors filled their Saturdays with coffee and arguments about the weather. I stared at the fireplace. A black clip folded against the mantel, the thick rubber band that had always cinched Nana's will, her handwritten trust. AI tired loop. The pain came later. First came the math. "Where is it?" I whispered. Her trust. The original. The copy she gave me wasn't signed. Dad's jaw worked. He looked older than he did during the funeral, when he held my hand at the gravesite as if it embarrassed him to need me. "You're making this ugly, Lila." "Ugly?" I laughed, because the other option was to fall to my knees. "You're burning," her last words. Sheila dropped the poker on the hearth with a clean metal note. "Enough," she said. "You're not stable right now." That word, stable, made my throat go tight. It was how people in Maple Harbor said crazy without getting sued. "Put out the fire," I said, "or My hands, empty a second ago, were suddenly holding the brass water pitcher that lived on the bookshelf. I hadn't planned it. I just did it. I poured water onto the flames. Steam billowed. Ash smeared like wet mascara. There was a silence that felt like the top of a roller coaster. Then Sheila said, "You just ruined the fireplace." And Dad said, "We need to take a breath." I set the pitcher down carefully. I breathed. I let the room sharpen around me. The mantel clock ticked. A raindrop popped in the ashes. I could see, amid the soggy paper, a corner of a cream-colored envelope. Nana's favorite stationery. A tiny flourish of the J in joy. Not all of it had burned. Later that night, after Dad told me I needed rest and suggested, a suggestion that tasted like an eviction, that I go stay with my friend Kat for a few days. The locks on the yellow house changed. Try to picture that moment. You stand on your own porch with 2 grocery bags cutting grooves into your fingers. The porch light you unwired and rewired 2 summers ago to prove to yourself you could fix something without YouTube help glows warm on your face. Your key doesn't turn. The door doesn't care that you trashed your elbow painting that trim, or that your grandmother taught you how to braid pie dough on that kitchen table. The door is a door. The lock is new. Your family is inside. That night, I sat in my car and watched my own living room lamp through the window. I could see Dad's shadow go by once, then again. At some point, the shadow became 2. At some point, I stopped crying. I realized the grocery bags were still in the passenger seat and the milk inside. Them didn't care about anything either. It was still cold. I went to Kat's. She opened her apartment door with a frown and a towel on her head. "Oh no," she said, pulling me in. "What did he do?" I told her in pieces how I found the fireplace, the rubber band, the ashes. How Dad and Sheila claimed I was overwrought and needed space. How the lock changed. Kat made tea, pressed the hot mug into my palms, and put on the detective face she used to crush crosswords. "They don't just burn things for no reason," she said. "Especially not the kind of people who iron napkins." I laughed, and the laugh cracked like a thin pond. "Sheila irons pillowcases too. Psychopath behavior," Kat said, then softened. "I'm sorry. Why would they burn it?" I asked. "Because it didn't help them." I held the mug to my cheek to make my water-swollen eyes sting less. Nana told me she decided after her fall last winter. She said she was leaving the bakery and house in a trust with my name on it. Dad would get the boat and the savings. And there was something for Ivy, too. At the sound of her name, a small bright thing in my chest flickered. Ivy, my half-sister. She was 12 and had a collection of sunglasses she wore at the worst times, like thunderstorms and her first school dance. I loved her more than anything, which made all of this feel like falling. Because I didn't want to hate the people who kept her safe. But they were trying to take the only thing that kept me tethered to what felt like a life. Do you have a copy? Kat asked. I shook my head. She showed me a draft. Handwritten. Said the lawyer would make it neat. She kept the original in her safe behind the flower bins. I smiled at Kat's raised eyebrow. I was 17 when I found it. She thought the safe a secret, but flour clings to everything. Kat snorted. Of course your grandmother hid law documents behind bread. We made a list on the back of an old takeout menu. For a person who had been told she was unstable and dramatic, I found comfort in a ballpoint pen and bullet points. 1. It must have gone to the lawyer. 2. There would be a copy somewhere. 3. Repo men don't change locks. Family does. By midnight, the tea was cold. Kat nodded toward my phone. Call Jonah. No. I grimaced. Jonah is a journalist, not a locksmith. And he's my ex. He's a journalist who used to cover county court, she said. He knows people. I rolled the idea around in my head. My last conversation with Jonah involved incisive remarks about boundaries and a plant I killed. I almost said no. Then I glanced at the bag of flour Kat kept on top of her fridge, and the instinct to look beneath it was so strong. I laughed at myself. Fine, I said. I'll call. Jonah picked up on the second ring. He sounded sleepy, like he'd fallen asleep on a stack of newspapers. Hey, Lila, did I wake you? Yes. A beat. Are you okay? No. I told him. There was an edge to my voice I didn't like. He cleared his throat. First, I'm sorry about your grandmother, he said. She once put extra cinnamon on my latte because she overheard me say cinnamon. Is childhood. That's not what you said. I murmured. I know, he said. But she made it true. There was quiet between us that didn't hurt as much as I'd expected. Second, there's a probate filing when a trust is executed, Jonah said. Check if they filed anything. If they haven't, we're dealing with either incompetence or deception. I know a clerk, Miss Hollis, and a lawyer who hates everybody but loves rules. He paused. And, Lila, don't meet with them alone. Who? Your father. Sheila. Anyone who wants what you have. When I finally slept, I dreamed of flour dusting everything. Even people's eyelashes and handprints pressed into the white like signals. Morning came like mercy. We went to the county courthouse. The walls were a green that tried too hard to be calm. Miss Hollis met us at the records window. She had a braid thick as a rope and businesslike eyes. And when she leaned in to whisper, it felt like a conspiracy. There's no recorded trust for Joy A. Carlisle, she said. But there is a deed transfer in process for the bakery property. My stomach made a sound like a bottle draining. To whom? Jonah asked, his pen already moving on his notepad. He never went anywhere without a notepad. I used to tease him about it. Now it made him seem like someone who could grab things before they blew away. Miss Hollis slid a printout under the glass. Pending buyer. Harbor Growth Partners, LLC. The name felt fake, like a costume. Who are they? Shell Company, Jonah said. But shells have owners. It's a rush filing, which means they want it quick. How quick? I asked. Closing next Friday. That gave me 8 days. I spent them collecting everything that smelled like truth. I went to Joyful Crust. The front was dark. Chairs perched on tables in the thin light way they sat at night when I did the last sweep. The bell on the door sounded like a memory. Hanging above the counter. Nana's chalkboard still listed the seasonal quiche, leek and Gruyere. A woman emerged from the kitchen. For a second my heart convinced me it would be Nana. It was Sheila. Ivy peered around her hip, sunglasses on even though we were indoors. Hi, kid, I said softly. She gave me the bare smile, the kind she used when adults were trying their best but failing. Sheila straightened. "We're closed," she said. "I can see that." "You shouldn't be here," she said. "This is my grandmother's bakery," I replied. I meant to sound calm. I sounded like a storm edge. Sheila smoothed her blouse the way she smoothed napkins. "You know how much money this place hemorrhages? Your father has been floating the payroll for months. Show me." I didn't know I was going to say it, but my body had become a physics experiment. When pushed, it pushed back. Sheila blinked. "Excuse me, show me the books," I said. "If it bleeds money, I'll see the wound." Sheila laughed. "You barely passed algebra." I didn't take the bait. "Where's Dad?" He came out of the back office, a spreadsheet in his hands. For a second, he looked like the father who taught me to change tires, who ate crusts I left behind, who laughed until he cried at a video of a goat fainting. Then he saw me and drew himself up. "Lila," he said, "you need to stop this." "Stop what?" I asked. "Asking for proof?" "We have a plan," he said. "You're not the only one grieving. Then why does your plan involve Harbor?" "Growth partners," I asked. "It's astonishing how much courage you can borrow from anger." Sheila's mouth tightened. "You've been snooping." "I've been reading public records," I said. "If the bakery is a hemorrhage, why sell to a shell company you control?" Dad's glance skittered toward Sheila. "There." It was a small thing. A little flinch. But it was a seam. "Ivy," I said, keeping my voice gentle, "can I talk to your dad alone?" Sheila moved, blocking me from the office. "No." I looked at Ivy. "Could you go get your science project?" "The volcano?" "I want to see it." Her mouth wobbled. "It exploded. It got vinegar on the cat." I smiled. A noble casualty. She went. Sheila went with her, saying something about cleaning up. I didn't have access to the safe behind the flower bins. I had a camera in my pocket, and a hand that knew which drawer hid Nana's receipt book and spare keys. We inventory love in the small things. In the bottom drawer, a chip clip shaped like a fish. Nana's reading glasses with a tiny scratch on the left lens. A brass key with a sticker heart on it. I grabbed the key, snapped 2 photos of the ledger left face down on the desk, and stepped back. The ledger had red lines in places that could be legitimate if we were bleeding, like they said. The red felt arranged. When I stepped out, Ivy stood there with a dish towel in her hand. Her sunglasses were slightly askew. "Volcano died?" I asked. She nodded. "I'll call you later," I said, for her, not for Sheila, whose mouth had gone thin as a blade. "Promise." We left. I didn't try to take back the bakery. I didn't throw things. I didn't cry until I saw the chalkboard again. Sometimes. Grief is not for the person you lost, but for who you were in the room where they lived. The heart sticker key turned a small, stubborn lock on a safe behind the bottom flower bin. In the quiet after midnight, with cat keeping lookout and the bakery smelling like yeast tinged with stale sadness, I opened it. Inside, a sealed envelope addressed to me in Nana's script, 2 bound packets of paper with ribbon, and a note in Nana's voice as clear as if she stood beside me dusting flour off her apron. "Lila," it read, "if you are reading this, I didn't get to put cinnamon in your coffee in the morning. Forgive me. Trust the lawyer with the bad tie. I changed my mind after I saw your father's eyes last spring. He was drowning and pretend smiled, like he did when you were little and broke that window. This bakery is yours in the trust. He will be angry. He will be worse, because he is ashamed. The second envelope is for him." I cried then. I cried for the "I love you's" hidden in recipes for the second envelope, for the fact that Nana still believed Dad would accept what this meant. Inside one of the packets were copies of the trust. The other was a list of accounts, including one I didn't know existed, a safety deposit box at Harbor Credit Union. Kat squeezed my shoulder. "Lawyer with the bad tie?" "I know him," I said. "Mr. Franklin. His tie had oranges on it last time, and he said they were to make people think of juice and not old age. We went to Mr. Franklin in the morning. He wore a tie with lemons. He peered through bifocals at the documents, and the tip of his tongue appeared while he read, which made me want to laugh and sob simultaneously. "Well," he said, This is thorough. He looked up. Miss Carlyle, your grandmother filed this correctly with me, but your father requested a copy 3 weeks ago. I told him he'd need your permission to make changes. He was not pleased. Did you give him anything? I asked. A public copy with all proprietary details redacted, he said, blinking. He left with anger and a lemon candy from my bowl. Did you bring me something from your grandmother? She always brought cookies. I brought news, I said. They're selling to their own company on Friday. Mr. Franklin's eyebrows made a steep triangle. No, they are not. They changed the locks, I said. And they burned something. Mr. Franklin closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. We will get an injunction. But I want one more thing. He held out a hand. The key in your pocket. I froze. How did you? Your grandmother labeled her key tops with heart stickers. He said, gentle. I know what you took because Joy told me where she put the second copy. And where people always look first. I swallowed. I wasn't going to tell you I went at night. Good, he said. Sometimes the truth needs to arrive imperfectly on time rather than tidily too late. By lunch, we had filed an emergency petition. The judge assigned was Delaney, a woman who'd once yelled at a developer in open court for calling a flood zone a damp opportunity. The hearing would be Thursday morning. That left something else. The deposit box. The credit union smelled like photocopies and coffee. The manager, a thin man with a nervous throat-clearing habit, brought out the metal box and put it on a table that made me think of playing Operation as a kid. Inside, 3 photographs, a flash drive, and a stack of receipts. The top photograph showed Dad and Sheila at a marina party last summer, their smiles a little too bright. Behind them, a banner, Harbor Growth Partners annual meet and greet. The second photo was older. Dad and a man I didn't recognize standing in front of the bakery with a sign that read, Coming soon, Harbor Growth Family Eatery. I choked. They were going to gut the place. Kat squeezed my arm. Jonah's pen scratched. He had agreed to meet us there, and he looked meaningfully too prepared in a muted plaid shirt that made him seem nicer than he was. He pocketed the second photo carefully. May I? You may copy, Mr. Franklin said. The flash drive contained scans of emails between Dad and a finance guy named Rob, referencing rebalancing risk and liquidity events, and a separate thread between Sheila and a designer discussing how to make the bakery look less grandmother, more concept. The receipts were from a notary public 3 towns over and a printing shop I'd never heard of. My hands shook as I realized what I held. They forged something, I whispered. Mr. Franklin's mouth became a line that could cut rope. They attempted to supplement the trust with a new addendum without the grantor's presence or signature. That is not a thing. I breathed, but they could have convinced someone not to look too closely. We'll make them look. Jonah murmured. He tapped the notary's name. I know her. She got in trouble once for notarizing a signature for a guy who signed as Mickey Mouse. She was embarrassed. She will talk. I posted a note to the door of Joyful Crust that afternoon. It looked like a simple thank you. A memory board invitation for a community night on Wednesday to honor Nana. I wrote about cinnamon and softball, about how she watered her garden with a measuring cup when the hose made a mess. I didn't mention injunctions. I didn't mention shells. I invited everyone to share stories and pies. I figured, if they wanted to remake this place under a different name, I would first fill it with as much joy as possible and set it alight in memory, not in flame. We spent Tuesday gathering statements. The notary cried, then produced her log, which showed that Sheila had brought a trust addendum without the grantor, insisting she couldn't walk due to injury. The notary admitted she didn't actually see Joy sign. I knew it was wrong, she said to my recorder, but I needed the $40. I don't have a lot of purity in me, but I have a terrible memory. I will remember that woman's face until my brain refuses to keep any more pictures. She looked like someone who threw away one nail and found her whole house drafty. On Wednesday, the bakery was full. The chalkboard had a new drawing I made of Nana's lemon bars. People brought pies and poems, roses and yard carrots, and placed them along the long table. I had arranged, with Mr. Franklin's help, to have the meeting recorded for posterity, we said. A small mic sat near the coffee urn like a black beetle. My father arrived late. He stood in the doorway, a man calculating exits. Sheila stood beside him in a dress that could cut with its edges. Ivy slid in behind them in jean shorts and emergency sunglasses. Neighbors spoke. Old Mr. Blaine told a story about Nana haranguing him for watering his lawn at noon. Miss Patel recalled the morning Nana refused to sell pastries to a man who used his phone on speaker in line. We laughed. We cried. Finally, I stepped forward with the second envelope. Before she died, I said, my voice steady and my palms damp. My grandmother wrote 2 letters. One was to me. I held up the envelope and put it down. This one was to my father. I handed it to him. I watched him read. I learned something about him, which is a strange sentence for a daughter to have to write at 28. I learned that my father has a tell. When he is about to lie, he hitches his left shoulder up a fraction of an inch, like he's discomforted by his own skin. He hitched it. He folded the letter too carefully. He looked up and chose his face. My mother loved all of us, he said, voice pitched for the room. We will honor that love by making decisions that keep the lights on. She left. The lights on for me. I said. A small gasp went around the room. People knew, but they didn't know. There is a difference between rumor and a letter you'll never get to answer. Sheila stepped closer. We can discuss this privately. We could have, I said, before you brought a forged addendum to a notary who didn't see my grandmother. Sign. Silence. Then murmurs. The mic, oh, the beautiful beetle, caught every rustle. Lila, Dad said, warning. I went on. I told the room the facts, like they were a recipe. Ingredients, an LLC with a pretty name, a pending sale. Red numbers that arrived when needed. Emails that wrote the truth when mouths would not. Method, smear the daughter who stands in the way, change the locks. Burn what feels like a stop sign. Bake until done. Sheila smiled, then. You have nothing, she said. Close enough that I could smell her citrus perfume. You have a dead woman's letter and your hurt feelings. I nodded toward the back, where Miss Hollis from the courthouse stood near the cake display we'd rebranded as a photo altar. I have more than that. Jonah lifted his phone. He had the notary on speaker. The room listened to a woman confess in a tired voice. The words were not dramatic. They didn't need to be. They were a door. And we all watched it swing wide. After that call, Mr. Franklin stepped up, his tie lemons reflecting cruelly in someone's flash. We have an emergency injunction hearing tomorrow morning, he said. Until then, nothing moves. If any of you see trucks carrying bakery equipment away, please call my office and the police. At the word police, Ivy flinched. I wanted to run to her, but the room belonged to everyone now, and I had invited them in. I had to stand inside what I'd built. The thing about revenge is that people expect it to look like something sharp. A knife. A backsplash of blood. Sometimes it looks like a lemon tie and a voice memo. Sometimes it's the long game of staying when they try to shake you loose. Dad left while people were still clapping for Delaney's name. Sheila's mouth did the thing that mouths do when they want to spit but can't. Find any place that won't stain. Ivy stayed, hugged me quick, and whispered, I didn't know. I squeezed her back. Me neither, I said. Not all of it. The hearing felt like standing in a room with weather. At first, it was just chilly. The judge asked a dozen precise questions that made words do what words are supposed to. Then it stormed. Mr. Franklin presented documents like a magician revealing doves. He put the notary's log on the table, the shell company filings, the photos from the deposit box. He asked Dad whether he had obtained a signed authorization from the trust. Beneficiary. Dad said no, he was in discussion. He hitched. Sheila tried to talk about money like it was oxygen. Judge Delaney asked her to sit. We will talk about money, the judge said. After we talk about how your hands smell like smoke. I almost laughed, then almost sobbed. Dad's lawyer, a man with hair that looked expensive and a frown that looked permanent, argued that a family's internal decision-making should not be policed by a court. Delaney leaned forward. A trust is not a group text, she said. It is a legal instrument. It is policed by me. We won the injunction. The sale was paused. Harbor Growth Partners stood on a pier waiting for a boat that would not arrive. It should have felt finished. It didn't. Justice is not a gavel hitting wood, it's paperwork, phone calls, and a calendar that refuses to hurry. I went back to the bakery. I made coffee for whoever showed up. People paid with cash and comfort. I put $5 in the tip jar at the end of each day because it felt wicked to take it for myself. 3 days after the hearing, I got a voicemail from a man who called himself an investor. "Call me," he said. "Your father owes me a lot of money." I called. His name was Rob. He said things like rebalancing and robbing Peter while paying Paul, though he didn't use the word rob, obviously. He told me Dad had invested heavily in a marina project and lost not only his stake, but money he'd borrowed against the house and, quietly, against the bakery, using the hope of an easier sale as collateral. "He shouldn't have done that," I said. "I don't disagree," Rob said wryly. He was desperate, and desperate people believe in tides that only move for them. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I don't want to get dragged into a fraud charge," he said. "And because your grandmother once refused to let me buy the last 3 of her sourdough loaves, saying, 'Take 1 and leave 2 for someone who needs it more.' I want to be on the side of that voice when this goes sideways." I didn't know it then, but that call would be a new seam becoming visible. It became worse before it got better. Harbor Growth tried to move fixtures at night. Miss Patel called me at 2 a.m. to tell me a truck was at the back door. I arrived with Jonah and my phone. I filmed Sheila directing men to carry out the glass display case. Sheila laughed at my camera at first. Then she saw Mr. Franklin step into the frame and back out of it like a stage note. He called the police. The truck left. In the morning, Ivy texted me. It was a photo of her cat, wearing a tiny sports jersey. Under it she wrote, "I hate being a person." "Me too," I wrote back. "But you're very good at being you." I wanted to protect her from all of it. I didn't know how to protect her from the people she lived with. A week later, the DA filed charges for false notarization and attempted fraud based on the forged addendum. I didn't need revenge to look like handcuffs. I needed consequences. People like Sheila understood money and invitations. When invitations stopped arriving, it felt like jail to them. Dad called me the night after the charges. He didn't leave a message. He called again. On the 3rd call, I answered. "Lila," he said. He sounded old. He sounded young. He sounded like someone's son. "Dad, you're ruining my life," he blurted. I closed my eyes. "No," I said. "I'm stopping you from uprooting mine." He breathed a long, dry breath. I was trying to fix it. "The money. The marina. You did it with my house," I said. "With Nana's hands." He started to blame circumstances, the economy, a man who promised returns. Then he stopped. I heard it. The place where language breaks down and truth leaks in. "I don't know how to be your father when you're not 10, he said. I leaned into the cupboard in Kat's kitchen and closed my eyes, forehead against cool wood. "I don't know how to be your daughter when you're not yourself." Silence stretched thin as a fishing line. He said, "What do you want me to do?" "Tell the truth," I said. "To the court. To Ivy. To yourself. Start with that." He did and didn't. He told a curated truth. He admitted to pressure. He admitted to ambition. He did not admit to watching the fire the way a person watches a thing they believe will save them. Documents say otherwise. The judge appointed a trustee to oversee the bakery trust and the property while the criminal process unfolded. I had won, and yet I roamed the rooms of my childhood like an intruder. Revenge is a blunt instrument. Justice is a yardstick with inches I couldn't speed up. I scrubbed the oven hood. I alphabetized the spices. I left a flower on the sill and another on the grave and told myself that living in the wreckage of someone else's choices counts as a form of building. One afternoon, Jonah sat at the end of the long table reading depositions for the millionth time. And he looked up and said, "You know, you can choose to bake for the people who don't deserve it. Or you can choose to bake for the people who do." "Like you?" I asked, teasing. He grinned, sheepish. "I'm a generous tipper." We laughed in the soft place between past and future. And I realized something that both surprised and didn't shock me. I wasn't trying to win my grandmother's bakery back anymore. I had done that. I was trying to decide what to do with it now that it was mine. I decided to be specific. We started a program on Thursday afternoons for teenagers who wanted to learn the alchemy of bread and the seriousness of a well-balanced budget. Miss Patel taught cost accounting with jokes that made kids groan and remember. Jonah taught a session on how to read your lease without accidentally selling your soul. I taught dough. The first time a girl named Remy pulled a perfect baguette from the oven, she cried. I pretended my eyes were sweating. Can Ivy come? She asked me that night over text. Yes, I replied. Always. She came, and she needed like anger needed a place to live. I told her to put her fists into it. I told her bread wants you to be mean to it sometimes, then kind. She laughed. It sounded like forgiveness doesn't have to be a speech. The trial took 6 months. During it, I learned more about the shape of greed than I'll ever unlearn. Sheila tried to claim she was just a bystander. The emails did not agree. Dad tried to cast himself as a drowning man grasping for rope. The rope burned. My palms. The verdict. Sheila guilty on counts of fraud and forgery. Dad guilty of attempting to dispose of trust assets without authority and of conspiring to commit fraud. He didn't go to prison for long. White-collar crime is often about paperwork and fines. Sheila got a harsher sentence. The universe is not perfectly symmetrical, but on the day judgment came, the sky was so clear outside the courthouse it felt like the town had taken a deep breath. People expected me to be jubilant. I was something else. I was relieved and sad and angry and counting. I kept counting. Flour scoops. Ledger lines. The number of times Ivy came to the bakery in a week. The minutes between waking and the first time I thought of my father. On the day the trustee handed me the formal keys, we had a small ceremony. The lemon tie made an appearance. Miss Hollis brought a plant. Jonah brought a joke. Ivy brought a drawing. My grandmother at the counter, me beside her. A big-hearted, messy apron between us. I said a few words. They weren't fancy. I thanked the town. I thanked Nana. I thanked myself without saying it aloud, by looking at the oven knobs and promising I would keep the heat right when the last person left. I locked the front door and sat on the stool behind the counter. I let the quiet fill all the places it could. Then I took out the envelope my grandmother had left for Dad. I had read it, of course. I was not yet noble enough not to. It was shorter than mine. It was a paragraph of love and a sentence of command. Give my girl what is hers. It is hers because she understands what it takes to make a crust that holds. I left it on the sill in the back office where the afternoon light made it as plain as it needed to be. A week later, Dad came. I didn't know if he would. He walked in like a man expecting a trap. I didn't set one. He stood at the counter and looked at the chalkboard and rubbed his hands together the way he did when he was cold as a kid and wanted adults to notice. I'm not welcome here, am I? He asked. I thought of all the beautiful and ugly things I could say. I thought of him in the courtroom. I thought of him at the marina with his smile too bright. I thought of the smell of paper burning. You're welcome to buy coffee, I said. He nodded. He did. He drank it standing, like penance. Then he glanced toward the back. Can I? Go ahead. He found the envelope. He read it again. He put it down. He looked older than all the other times he had looked older, which is a very precise way of saying he was a person, not a role. And people are complicated in ways that resist revenge being neat. He turned. I'm sorry, he said. It wasn't enough. It was also something. I nodded. He left. I did not chase him. Ivy texted me a picture of a loaf she baked at home, ugly and beautiful. I told her I was proud of her. I was proud of her. I've heard people say that revenge is a dessert best served cold. I think they never worked a day in a kitchen. Most desserts suffer when they're cold. A pie wants to be warm enough to let the filling move. What I served didn't have a fancy name. It was boundaries. It was a ledger that balanced. It was teenagers laughing in a room their parents once tried to sell to a shell. Company. I still have the rubber band from the mantle in a little tin. It is brittle and useless now. A circle that can no longer stretch without snapping. It reminds me of what love must not become in the name of keeping families together. The bakery opens every morning at 7. I flip the sign. I turn on the lights. Sometimes I imagine the locks changing again. I still keep keys on a heart sticker, one for the front door, one for the safe. I teach Ivy to keep hers on a wristband she can't lose. The last question I get asked most often is the one I least expected. Do you miss the person you had to defeat? I do. I miss the father who licked batter off a spoon and told me the secret of pancakes is patience. I do not miss the man who tried to burn what he could not own. Those two people live in the same body, and I have learned to love one and defend myself from the other. In family math, both truths can be solved for X. I don't know what you would have done. Maybe you would have walked away from a town that knows your business better than you do. Maybe you would have stitched your name into a new life, folded past heartbreak into fresh dough, and baked until the smell became a map. I chose to stay. And staying in the end was the sweetest revenge I had to offer. Tell me, what would you have done if you walked in and smelled smoke and realized it was your past on fire?